Hey, everybody. Thank you for being here, number one. Thank you for tuning into the departure from the written format. Sometimes things need to be written and read, and sometimes the storytelling just feels better in a different medium. And today is one of those days. It's been a little bit since I've published anything, and I've been in this space of sort of deep thought and creativity and investigating. I will tell you, this isn't what this is about, but I will tell you, I'm really, really working on dialing into my limiting beliefs. It's been a really big theme for me. I hold so much as capital T truth because it makes me feel safe, because it makes my brain feel safe, my nervous system feel safe ish. It's like it's not a real safety. It gives me a sense of certainty in a world that's very uncertain. Um, and and I've had to recognize the ways that that safety is false, that surety, that certainty is false. And I've had to think about the ways in which I continue to keep myself small because there are things as in beliefs, stories that I have inherited or believed to be true about myself and about other people. And so I don't think it'll ever go away. I don't know. Right? But like I am in this work of being like, well, why do I think that? And why is that true? And is that true? And it's probably not true. Or there's something else that's also true. So it's been a wonderfully creative time. And I'm happy to come back to this platform. And I'm happy to, over the next couple of months, share with you the way that I have wanted to talk about those things and offer up some other ways of engaging with my work and with yourself through my work and through the other ways that you do your self work. Um, and so, yeah, I'm just feeling really like I'm standing in my integrity, and I'm just so ready for a season of expansion. I also want to acknowledge that it's just not an easy time for so many reasons. I'm like, oh, I'm doing my self work and it feels so good. And also, the other truth is that there are so many destructive and terrifying things happening all over the world and touching each one of us in different ways. And I want to acknowledge that. Just if you know me, you know that that's living in my consciousness anyway, but I still want to say to you that um, this is part of the work, holding both, right? And there's something in that I learned through meditation and breath work. I don't think it's an official mantra. Maybe it is. I'm not sure. But this idea of being present by saying, right now I am, and then filling in the blank. One that I return to a lot, especially as a Black woman in this country. I often feel unsafe or uneasy or unsettled. And so I will say, right now I am safe. And I'm literally talking about the moment that I'm in, and then this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment, right? And that's how granular sometimes I have to be. And for you, that might be right now I am safe. It might be right now my children are safe. Right now I have a roof over my head. Right now my clothes are clean. Right now I am fed. Right now I am here, whatever it is. But sort of, RuPaul says something like, you can look at the darkness, but you can't like stare at it, something like that, right? We acknowledge what's going on. We acknowledge our experience and our particular ways that we might be affected. whether that's personal or whether that's peripherally or whether we anticipate something happening down the line, all of that is to be acknowledged. All of that is to be acknowledged as a part of our collective experience, right? Because even if there is something that's happening that we aren't directly affected by, as allies, as advocates, as fellow humans, we still need to be dialed in. We still need to activate empathy and compassion, right? So there is this acknowledgement, but then there is also the acknowledgement of what you are experiencing right now, and the compassion and the grace, and also the hope, right? Like holding on hope. It's not toxic positivity. Hope is a practice. Hope is hard. um, it's trying to find some light or some positivity or some way to contribute or some way to, again, not stare at the darkness. So sitting in the vastness of the human experience right now. It's kind of a trip, right? So I am holding for you that I hope you are well. I hope you are finding ways to take care of yourself, your spirit, your mind, your body. If nothing else, try to get sleep. Try to drink water, right? Try to nourish your body as best you can. Try to get outside if you are safe. Take some deep breaths. Sometimes it's the smallest things to just get ourselves from moment to moment. So none of that was what I actually want to talk to you about, but we just needed to have a moment first. So here's the real, the real, the product. It's not a product. I noticed on Instagram that there were these different clips coming up over and over again of aerobics videos from the 80s and 90s. Anything from aerobics classes to aerobics, like fitness competitions, which I didn't even know existed. And I found it absolutely delightful. So for those who don't know me or who don't know much about my upbringing or my story, my father was a professional boxer. And my mom, while she didn't do fitness in any professional capacity, certainly a health and wellness enthusiast, runner, weightlifter, that sort of thing. And so in my house growing up, we had a room that we would call the workout room. And it was a home gym, basically. There was no cardio equipment, but I can remember, if I close my eyes, I can remember the exact layout of the room, and it's making me miss my dad and my childhood home and all of the things, but it was all black steel. It was incredibly heavy and loud when you would lift weights. And I remember we had like a lat pull down machine. We had free weights. I think you were able to bench press. I think there was an easy curl bar. It was like this whole massive, remember Bowflex machines? It kind of like that, but it wasn't Bowflex, but just like kind of like this big rig that had a lot of things connected to it. And I think I was 4 maybe when we moved into my childhood home from my parents' apartment. And so by 5 or 6, we were lifting weights as a family. My brother and I were more than welcome to go in and hang out with my parents and sort of learn how to move our bodies in that way. And because my mom is only 20 years older than me, she was she was still in her mid to late 20s. And so we were like, of course, there were cassette tapes, y'all, because this is the 90s, right? I was born in 87. So we were blasting like Paula Abdul and Janet Jackson and just having the time of our lives. And it kind of cracks me up sometimes how those memories unconsciously turned into this career for me, because it's not what I had ever planned, and yet here we are. So you could say that my mom was my first example of a woman who lifted weights, because a lot of the what was popular at the time, as confirmed by these videos, was like aerobics, step aerobics, and walking with ankle weights or wrist weights or little hand weights, 2s and 3s. I remember my maternal grandmom used to do that. I remember Suzanne Summers videos and my paternal grandmother's thigh master. I remember lots of spandex biker shorts. I mean, even my dad wore spandex biker shorts, which is its own thing. And the little clip accessory thing for your t-shirt that you could thread through the clip and create a whole little look for your oversized t-shirt. There were so many, there's so many things from this era that just totally shaped who I've become and how I look at health and wellness, right? Um, and what's so interesting is that back then, it was a thing if you were a woman who lifted weights, like weights, like the way we think about lifting weights now, functional fitness, like your berries of the world, like things like that, right? It was a thing. It was a thing to be a woman who was like muscular. And while it wasn't a thing in my household, it was pretty normal. I certainly didn't think that my mom was doing anything outside of the norm. I just had no awareness, right, as a kid. But as time went on, as I learned, as the adults around me would talk and I would listen, and what I learned is that as a woman who lifted weights, you could be called a bodybuilder and it not be a compliment. You could, you could be called masculine. You could be called lots of things, but essentially that you were either emasculating men or that you wouldn't be seen as attractive to men because of your body and because of your musculature. And if you're close in age to me or even older, you probably have some consciousness of the journey of Slim Fast and margarine versus butter and Atkins and South Beach and these frozen meals and fat burning pills and fat camp and Slim Fast, and you have spin and you have CrossFit, and there's just been this wild evolution from the time I was a little kid lifting weights in my parents' house till now. And science around women's bodies and all, it's not perfect, right? We still have so many questions and we're still uncovering stuff, especially around menopause and perimenopause and all of these things. And I know that it doesn't always feel like we have exactly what we need. However, there has been a big shift to say that, like, you have to lift weights. Got to lift weights, especially for women as we age, as our hormones change. Having lean muscle mass is really, really good for us. Okay. And we know that, just generally speaking, right? Having some muscle, right? It's what keeps you upright, so that you can do the activities you love. You can, experience less pain and less fatigue and, all of these things. We know this. And what's also true is that the health and wellness industry is so vast and so confusing. We don't always get the most up-to-date information. We get a lot of pseudoscience and snake oil and a lot of opinions and influencers, and it's a lot to sift through. And so I started thinking, like, are there anything that the things that we agree on as an industry? I came up with three. There might be more, but I have three. One, that movement is essential, right? That, we have to move our bodies every day, and we have to move them in different ways, and that we need to have strong muscles. Number two would be that having community while you move helps with adherence and accountability and staves off loneliness. And number three would be that, as a uh, complement to your movement practice, that you want to be getting sleep, that you want to have healthy habits that all sort of synergistically work together: sleep, hydration, healthy foods, vitamin D, getting outside, getting fresh air. All of these things will sort of like help with longevity and health span, right? And then after those three, I feel like it just really, we take a hard left. Okay. It just, ooh, anything from what you're doing to how you're doing it to how often you're doing it to supplements to shakes to fasting to whatever. It's just, we, lots of people have lots of different things, but I don't believe it's that simple. You have some people over here spending astronomical amounts of money on customizable everything: blood work, meal plans, workouts. You have other people who have free memberships at the YMCA, right? The decisions that we make about our health and wellness, they're nuanced, they're complex. Anything from access, right? Like financial access, safety around you, where you live, your education, time, resources, location, nutrition, the support, all that stuff. We aren't starting from the same place. And we also don't have the same goals, right? Uh, you have some people meal planning and prepping to the high heavens. You have other people struggling to put food on the table. And we all are looking to be healthy and to live long and to live without disease, right? And, you couple that with the laws or lack of laws or regulation or lack of regulation. And you couple that with, privilege. And it's even that much that I just said. It's like even the most well-intentioned workout enthusiast, health and wellness enthusiast can be like, wait, what am I supposed to do? How, like, am I doing it wrong? uh, you know, then God forbid you actually are looking for specific results. It can become even more challenging to try to figure out how to manage your health and wellness. And I started to think, and I was like, damn, this is so interesting to me, because there's another area where it almost mirrors the nuance, the disagreements, the being fired up, wanting results, being desperate for results, negativity bias, other cognitive biases, all of the things that have, sort of like come up. It comes up in politics too, right? Think about it. Think about how when you are stuck in a negative loop in your workouts and blame and shame and guilt and anger, and think about this spiral, and think about the spiral you go through with your own body, personhood, and then think about how you think about other people, and think about how you not you personally, but how you, the universal you, how you want to police other people. You want to police their decisions. You want to um like, you don't want to feel insecure in what you're doing, and so, right, that ego radiates to the people around you. And think about, how you feel when it feels like someone has access to something that you don't. And it's a fascinating connection for me. And what happens when we sort of like are stuck in this muck is that there's no progress. What's so frustrating is like we're fighting about dumb stuff often, not always. We're fighting about dumb stuff and then can't get to the real issues. We can't sort of like get to progress, or people are falling through the cracks because we're, to use health and wellness as an example, like we're over here arguing about whether or not you should fast, where like people don't even have access, right? It's like we're not even on the same planets sometimes. And as we watch things crumble, as we watch paradigms shift, as we watch changes in how we communicate and how we get our information, I'm not saying I have any answers, but I'm saying like the critical thinking has to really be ratcheted up here. Here's what I know to be true. And I'm using an example from 2020, and I talk about this not often, but I think often enough for me. Particularly when George Floyd was murdered, and so many of us were just like sent rage, fear, all of it. It's not like racism became new in that moment, but we as in Black people and people of color, we felt like the aperture had widened enough so that maybe some of what we were feeling, had been feeling, experiencing, could get through. Maybe people would listen. And it felt like, that happened in some ways. But what's interesting is that, certainly I'll speak for myself, like that rage and that fear manifested into activism on the internet. We were home with COVID. Which also manifested into like this gripping, desperate, angry, why won't you just get it? Why won't you change? Why won't you listen? Why won't you move faster? How do you not know this? How have you not read this book? Just fear manifesting in this like really kind of energy, right? And I'm not saying that I would change anything. I'm just saying that like I met the moment, a lot of us met the moment, whatever. But the wisdom in that is that it is really unsustainable to sort of run on rage and negativity and only focusing on the differences. I didn't know how behavior change worked. I didn't know how to get an idea to stick. I didn't know how to start with where we agree and then build on that and give someone the opportunity to grow into an ally, perhaps, or to give them the space to reject being an ally and being okay with it because that's their business and there's nothing I could do about it, right? And so when we think about our politics, and I'm not talking about any sort of like hate groups or supremacist groups. That's a different conversation. I'm talking about those of us who feel like we are good people, who feel like we are informed people, those of us who consider ourselves to be good neighbors, who say things like, I don't hate anybody, right? I'm talking about like this group of people who we say the right things and sometimes our actions don't always align, right? Similar to how we make decisions about health and wellness because of how nuanced it is, right? It is the same. So how we make decisions about who we vote for or who we include or not, maybe the starting point is being left out or being bullied or feeling disenfranchised or people not taking you seriously, or it could be poverty or chronic illness or religious intolerance, right? Education, uh, where you are geographically located in this country or in the world. It could be what you, going back to limiting beliefs from the very beginning of this video, what you were taught, what you internalized, what you learned in school, who your friends were, what you watched on TV, all of these things influence how we move through the world. And I don't care if you're talking about health and wellness or if you're talking about who you vote for. Part of why we struggle to make changes is because how we move through the world is rooted in what we think is true. What we think is true about ourselves, other people, about systems. We took what we were fed and we made it the capital T truth. And the ability, in my opinion, to be able to see those connections is so imperative to me. Like that, being able to say, what else is like this is incredibly important because it's a gap, right? It's a gap in skill and decision making. Consider this, going back to this idea of like what you thought would be true and like why behavior change is so hard. If you were to believe in the humanity of a Black person or a trans person or an undocumented immigrant, what else would have to be true? If you were to believe in their humanity, what else would have to be true? What else would you have to admit, right? What would that mean and how we think about excellence versus mediocrity, or what an American job is, or a Black job, God forbid, or what a qualified candidate looks like? What does that mean in terms of one race being superior over all others? Or what does that mean in terms of there being a hierarchy for race, ethnicity, skin color in the first place? What would that mean for how you look at your parents, your teachers, the people who taught you these things? Because you would have to grapple with, at best, being severely misinformed. At worst, you were just flat out lied to. So it's easier to just believe what we believe. It's easier to just think like, oh my gosh, the going back to health and wellness, it's easier to believe, that people who are in larger bodies are just lazy. It's easier to believe that if you're not getting the results that you want, it's because you're not working out hard enough. It's easier to believe that a hustle, no days off mentality is the only way to do it. It's easier to believe that, eating, I don't know, like raw eggs and liver. I just watched The Liver King on Netflix. It's easier to believe that like that is the key to health than to sort of break down all these other elements of what makes up a healthy person, or what health looks like in different bodies or in different parts of the world, or how some people don't have access to certain things and that informs their health, their mental health, their physical health. What if people can't get to the doctor? What if people don't have access to vaccines? Like, we don't want to have the bigger conversation because it's disorienting to have to break down all of your beliefs and then feel naked, to feel like you have to then, because it's not just the belief, it's everything around the belief. If the belief changes, then the community changes. The belief changes, then you change. Then what else? What does that mean for your job? What does that mean for your friends? What does that mean for the church you go to? Or what does that mean for the neighborhood you live in? It's an entirely different way to look at accountability and action. So it's comfortable to just double down. It's way more comfortable to double down. It took decades before weightlifting for women became mainstream and socially acceptable. And still to this day, you hear women saying, well, I don't want to get bulky. What? What? Read a book. Where have you been? Or there's people who talk about, exercise or hard exercises being unsafe in pregnancy. It's like, what? Read a book. You're misinformed. But behavior change is hard, right? It never ceases to amaze me what we're not willing to look at. Undocumented immigrants pay a higher tax rate than a lot of corporations and wealthy individuals, and yet this narrative around being job stealing criminals exists. It blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. The things that we miss. The things that we refuse to consider, the things that we refuse to change, the ways that we just refuse to dig deeper. I had a conversation with a really close friend of mine, and we were talking kind of about behavior change and how, everybody wants to change the world and everybody wants to break down systems and do all this like big work, but like can't change their own habits, can't look at their own stuff, can't make any changes that would actually then be able to influence anything bigger. I have no action steps for you, y'all. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you to do. You decide if it's something that you want to dig deeper into and what that would look like. And I don't know, but I just needed to say what I said. And I also, I just, we cannot lose our critical thinking skills. We cannot lose our ability to question. And we cannot hold ourselves back from growth because we are scared to see what's on the other side. It's not supposed to be easy. If we're looking for easy, we've gone the wrong way. Turn around. Go back. I think I'm going to leave it there. If you have any further thoughts that you want to share, you can send me a message, leave a comment. If you think this would resonate with someone else, please send it to them. I would very much appreciate it. And if you're like, yes, more videos, more this, let me know that. I mean, it's coming anyway. So, but like, let me know. Have a fantastic rest of your day, week, month, whenever this reaches you. And I'll talk to you soon.